much. You're just so crazy. Love it. All right. I'm starting a new series today. Started it Tuesday night is my dress rehearsal. And that's this private class I teach in my home. So this morning is actually the official beginning, and I am calling it Believe and Grow. And it's actually based on the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Everybody is very well, I think, aware of that book. I had a difficult relationship with that book for many, many years. I probably first saw that book in the 70s or something. It's been around forever. There's several different versions of it. There's at least two main versions of it. Probably the one that a lot of people are familiar with is the 1960 version, which was edited from the original 1937 version. And so it was a little bit different, not greatly different, but different enough. And as I've been here for the last couple of months, and you've sort of heard me talking about all of this stuff, I feel like I really started teaching this stuff like 30 years ago. And I started with Terry Cole Whitaker in like 1983 or 84. And I feel like now I'm ready to start. I feel like this is the beginning because all of that were decades, not of learning, but actually unlearning. So I've just had decades of unlayering and unlearning and unlayering and unlearning. And so a lot of it was very gradual, as I've talked here over the last months, of letting go of a lot of religious thinking that was so just cellular, because you're really, if you're like me, it really is a brainwashing that you go through. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that that's just what happens. I went to Catholic school, so that means that I went to Mass 6 days a week. That's brainwashing, because you are, in Catholic Mass, you are actually saying affirmations, and they're horrifying and terrible affirmations. They're just the worst affirmations in the whole universe. Oh God, I am heartily sorry for having offended thee, and I detest all my sins. It's basically about how you are a piece of shit, that you don't deserve to exist, but since God is so good, you can. And you're saying this at 6 years old, and you're like, what the hell did I do? But it's brainwashing. It is an affirmative statement that brainwashes. And that's why Catholicism was way better when it was in Latin and you didn't know what they were saying. Then you just felt the ritual and the energy, you were okay, was when you found out the horror of what they were saying. So that was my, brainwashing. And so I came to New Thought with all of that still in place in many ways. And so it's taken a long, long time. So there were a lot of things that I was not comfortable with in New Thought, and I would just sort of resist some of those things and was really drawn to teachers and teachings that still had some of the remnants of guilt and religion. And so the last couple of years, that's gone away. And then some of you who've been coming for a while have heard me say, and then I just let go of spirituality too. So now I'm post-spiritual. Post-religious, post-spiritual. And so I feel like I am really more of who I've always been with less of who I really wasn't. So that's why I say here all the time, I hope you don't get anything out of this morning. Because really the ideal is that you leave here with less. Less complication, less justification, less stories, less superstition, less of all of that kind of stuff. So I had an issue with something like Think and Grow Rich, because it sounded like it was about money. And of course, that is not good if you are religious or spiritual. You're not supposed to care about money and things and stuff like that. And particularly because so much of Think and Grow Rich, which we'll be talking about this morning, and which I've been talking about in various ways for months, is about desire. And of course, in spirituality, in a lot of spirituality, see, New Thought has gotten all very muddied water. Very, very muddied water, which is why the more that I am teaching and learning, the more simple I become. This is one of the things I love about Louise Hay. She always says, I'm a very simple person. I'm like, I'm with you, Louise. Let's just keep this simple. So New Thought over the many years has gotten mixed in with a whole lot of other stuff that not only has nothing to do with New Thought, but in some ways is contradictory to New Thought. I think bringing Buddhism into New Thought was an enormous mistake. I think a lot of those things that on their own are fine, but really just confuse and mess up everything that New Thought is really about. And so my process has been a lot of just letting that go, and let's just get clear here. Because desire is not unspiritual. There's nothing wrong with desire. The only reason that desire ever causes suffering is because of our attachment to form, not because of the desire itself. Desire is what keeps life moving. It's what keeps life operating. Without desire, the human race would die out pretty quickly. First of all, we would stop procreating because you would never be horny. Horny is desire. Let's all say horny. Horny. There you go. I love it. All the early metaphysicians talked about sex. Ernest Holmes talked about sex and libido. Napoleon Hill talks about sex and libido. Catherine Ponder talked about sex and libido. Without desire, we're done for. Without desire, not only will we not have the sex impulse to keep procreating, you would not thirst, you would not hunger, you would starve to death. Everything is rooted in the desire. I got an email yesterday from somebody. The thing is with me now, it's like you just really have to keep up. Because something that I said a month ago, I might be like, oh yeah, I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that anymore. So people who've been coming for a long time are like, didn't you say, yeah, I did, but I don't believe that anymore. So somebody had sent me an email and they were talking about having a conversation with somebody else about what is the purpose of life. And she was talking to somebody and he was asking her, what is the purpose of life? So she was saying the spiritual answers, Well, life is about love, and so we're here to love, and that's the purpose is love, and da-da-da-da. So then, of course, then you have to work really hard to make that true because it's not true. So then you have to really work hard to try to make that true and to understand that. So the guy was saying, well, then what about all the lovelessness? Well, yeah, because we turn away from love because of our fear. Well, why would we do that? Well, I don't know. So then she writes me. Trying to figure all this out. I said, well, the purpose of life is not love. And mostly when we talk about love, we don't even know what the hell love is. When we talk about love in that way, what we really mean is affection and attachment. And really, affection is just a small aspect of love. It's just one aspect. And we've talked about this all the time, about how a mother does not always feel affection for her child, but she always loves the child. Sometimes she wants to strangle the child, but she still loves the child. Right? So we think of love as a feeling. Love is not a feeling. That's just one aspect of love. The purpose of life is expansion. That's all life is. This is the beauty of Ernest Holmes. In starting something called religious science, he saw no distinction between the two. There was no bone of contention between science and spirituality. That God itself is expansion. Ernest Holmes is all about how you and I and everything is God expanding. That's why desire is part of God. It's the desire to expand. Right? Now, love is what gives that expansion meaning. Right? That's what gives our life meaning, is the love behind it. So we can choose how we're going to expand. We can expand in joy and love, or we can expand fearfully and bitterly. That's up to us. But expansion is what life is. And so even when you're watching, do you ever watch, what's that show? Through the Wormhole? Is that what it's called? No? You know the show? No, the TV show that's on every week, Through the Wormhole, with, I can't remember, it's on every week, and with Morgan Freeman. And so it's really fascinating. You really have to find it. There are new episodes on right now. But they talk about all of these scientific things, and as somebody who is a metaphysician, you watch this and you go, well, yeah, that's exactly, they're finally catching up with us. It's like they've taken, 50 years to catch up with where we've been. They're never going to catch up with us, but they do, at least they're making progress in catching up with us. And talking about this is how reality operates. And when they're talking about science, it sounds like they're talking about religious science. This is how we expand. This is what reality is. This is what reality isn't. This is what all of this stuff is. So it's a big deal sometimes, as it was for me for a long time, to make peace with the idea of it's okay to desire and want things, even to want cold, hard cash. I want money. And to think, oh, you can't say that. That's a terrible thing to say. So we want to talk about these things that we think, well, this is the spiritual thing and this is the non-spiritual thing. Now, luckily, it's taken me this long to get here because that's what qualifies me to teach this better than probably anybody else. And I don't say that from an arrogant place. I say that from nobody has learned slower than me. Therefore, I am wildly qualified to teach this. I didn't skip anything. Okay? Weekend seminar takes me 5 years, so I'm like, I really get it. So we started talking, a few months ago about that. We started with that book, The Desire Map. I don't know if any of you here heard me talking about that, but that was sort of just softly moving into some of this idea about what do you want and really what the essence of all of that is. So, like I said, in many ways, I'm going back to the very beginning. I'm going back to the beginning where I walked in with Terry Cole Whitaker, and she said, you can have what you want. You can be, do, and have what you want. Prosperity is your divine right. Oh my God, that pissed people off. Those bumper stickers that said prosperity is your divine right, that just pissed people off all over town. Like the newspapers and stuff just loved to crucify her about that. And it was easy to do because a lot of times that bumper sticker was on a wreck of a car. So it was really sort of like, well, really? Because it doesn't really look like that. Thank God. But one of the things, because I've been around the block so long, and I feel like I've met and seen everyone, like all the great teachers and the near great, and you start to look at the difference, because I've been around forever, and for whatever reason, I've been privy to a lot that goes on, and I know things. And so I see behind the curtain a lot of times with these people. And what I found that was fascinating to me is that all of the spiritual people who talked about love, love, love all the time and said, don't worry about the money, don't worry about the stuff, and just serve God and just think about love, have turned out to be the most vicious, passive-aggressive, hateful people on the planet. I mean, spiritual teachers who write bestsellers and travel all over the world who you wouldn't want to sit down with for 5 minutes. And what I noticed was a lot of the people who talked about prosperity and abundance and having whatever you wanted were some of the most loving, with the highest integrity, with organizations that worked and families that worked. It was just amazing to me. So all the time, we're always sort of looking at, that's what they're saying, but let's see what the experience is really like to live it. What's it like to really live it? Like, so many people that talk about serving God, serving God, serving God, serving God. Well, I mean, there are lots of spiritual organizations where the people in there are serving God right into the poorhouse. One of the things that I remember Terry saying years ago is, if you don't take care of yourself, someone else will in their way. Right? If we're not taking care, so someone will take care of us, but in their way. So the government will end up taking care of us. If we end up homeless living out on the street, then somebody's going to, the police or whoever, somebody's taking care of you then in their way, not in your way, because you are too busy serving other people. Right? Instead of save yourself, that's Ian Levanzano used to go, save yourself, save yourself. When you save yourself, then you have something to give to other people. And so this idea of believe and grow, one of the reasons I think also that I had problems with Think and Grow Rich and why I needed to sort of go through these 30 years is because of the ways where it's just slightly off that it's going to make a world of difference for us to talk about as we go through. Now, this is the version that I have now that's fabulous. You should not get any other version, I'm just saying. for several reasons. The paper's so nice. That really makes a big difference. It's nice, large print. It's very smooth. And this is the original 1937 version. So what they did was, and it talks about this in the introduction a little bit, is, of course, the original 1937, that came right after the Depression. So there was a lot of stuff in it about the Depression that they took out in 1960 that they put back in because of the times we live in. Right? Because they were talking about, after the Depression and the way the world is now, well, that's what we're saying now again. Like the housing bust and the this and that, so this, Now, the other thing is, and this I found out from Esther and Jerry talking about this, is that they had taken out a lot of, many instances of the word vibration. Like vibration is in here, I think, 58 times. And they took all that out in 1960 because it was too woo-woo. So then they put the woo-woo back in. Because these are post-secret times. The secret. The secret. The secret, the secret. Now, we have to talk about the secret because in here, he talks about that's where she got it from, basically, is from this. Because he talks about the secret all through this. And he starts out at the very beginning, he says, I'm not going to tell you what the secret is, because it's a secret. But he tells you, it's in this book it's in every chapter, and people will find it wherever. It's on the first page, it's on the last page, it's here. But the people who realize and see what the secret is, they will know, da-da-da-da. That's all just bullshit. Brilliant marketing, but it's all just bullshit. Because there is no the secret. And it really says the same basic thing all through it, which they all say, which is thoughts are things, you become what you think about, da-da-da-da, all that kind of stuff. I will tell you in a few minutes, though, what I think the secret is. The secret for us here today. And today is really a follow-up in many ways and a continuation of when I was here last month. So those of you who were here last month heard me say this. If not, you can get the CD in there. There's a YouTube of it. But we talked about this whole thing of writing a letter. I said you can write a letter to Jacob. It's in the future, it's 6 months, and you tell the story of what's happened in your life, and you read that. Now, of course, most of you have probably read this. You know that in here he talks about, and they all talked about this kind of thing at that time. If you read The Magic of Believing, or you read The Greatest Secret There Is, by what's his name, and who's it's. They're all take out a card and write da-da-da-da. Now, there's nothing magical about a 3x5 card. So it is not about, you have to write it on a 3x5. People get very superstitious. It has to be a 3x5 card. So you don't have to write a 3x5 card. And what he wants you to do, in fact, we'll read what he says here is this is in chapter 1, which is desire. And just notice, too, I think they put in a lot of capitalization that was the original capitalization and stuff, too, so that you can see that he's just drilling into your head. The first chapter, which is desire, that is in huge capital letters, on every page, 5 or 6 times. So desire, 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 burning desire, your burning desire, your desire, your burning desire. And he tells the story about his son who was born with no ears, who he believed and he had a desire that his son would hear, and then the story of how his son ultimately did hear. So he tells all this about desire, that you have to have a burning desire. This is the method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent, and it consists of 6 definite practical actions. Now, he's talking about money, but you can be talking about anything. So it can be the desire for peace. It can be the desire to have the job of your dreams. It can be the desire to be married. It can be the desire to heal a disease. It doesn't matter what it is. That's why I said the series is Believe and Grow. Just believe and grow. Grow whatever. Grow healthy, grow harmonious, grow loved, grow whatever you want to grow. And it really is not about thinking, it's about what you believe. You can think all kinds of stuff, and your thoughts don't have any real effect if you don't believe your thoughts. It's the thoughts we believe that actually take action in our lives and in our experience. So that's why it's not even really true that you can't have negative thoughts, you can't say negative things if you don't believe them. Because it's also true that you can say lots of positive things and they don't have any effect if you don't believe them. right? That's why people say affirmations don't work. No, you don't have the right affirmation because you don't believe the affirmation you're saying. It's not going to have, they're not magic spells. They have to have an effect on you. That's why we talk about bridging affirmations. Like from Michael Losier talks about a bridging affirmation is, I am in the process of. So if you're like, you've just gotten your final eviction notice and you have no money in the bank and you've lost your job, it's not going to do you much good to say, I'm wealthy, abundant, and cared for. Right? Because you probably don't believe that. So you have a bridging belief of, I am in the process of opening up to prosperity. I'm in the process of finding my right work. I am in the process of. That's a bridging belief. It helps you to go from the place of not believing into something that's more general, that's less specific. Because oftentimes, the more specific you get, the less you believe it. Right? All right, so he's going to tell us the 6 steps then. First, fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money. Be definite as to the amount. There's a psychological reason for definiteness which will be described in a subsequent chapter. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. This is another reason why people don't have the experience, is they don't know, you have to seed it somehow. So that's why the chapter on organized planning is so good, because he talks about you in your work going the extra mile. I think one of the reasons that I have been able to do this full-time for as long as I have, considering nobody knows who I am, and I have no degree. What the hell? Like, I'm just some guy who talks. I have no publisher, I have no nothing. I've been doing this full-time for 30 years, is because I am always thinking about, and listen, you all know, I'm not that nice. Right? I'm like, don't talk to me, you can't hug me, I'm not in the mood. Like, it's because I know why I'm here, and I'm focused only on that. I'm here to give the absolute best talk that I can possibly give, and I'm going to give you nothing but meat. Nothing but meat. There's a guy in LA who said, he has his own ministry and his Sunday services and stuff, and he said, there's a guy that I think would be better coming to you because he wants the spirituality with no hugs, no singing, and no commercials. And that's me. Right? God, a couple of times when I've gone to Agape, it's like 45 minutes of commercials before they start anything. Take our workshop, buy our book, do our thing, get our blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're just going to get meat here. That's all. There's no announcements. This is just the meat. And I'm always thinking about, what am I going to give them today? And really having an intention of something for the people to take away. One of the reasons that I liked doing smaller groups, even when I was over at the hotel, is if I was talking about a book, I would just have it for everyone there. I would buy like 25 books and have them there for the 25 people that were showing up. So you're always thinking about this. People also, when they start their own businesses, I'm always like, well, that a business isn't something that gives you something. It's something that you are putting into all the time. So every dime you make for the first X number of years, you're going to be putting right back into the business. So if it's your business, you better love it. Because if you don't love it, that will seem like a sacrifice to you. But if you love it, you'll love doing that. You'll love that you're always looking and thinking, what can I give more? How can I do more, right? So that's why that's such an important part, that you're not just saying, okay, I would like some shit. Right? It's like, that you are putting out some kind of energy, whatever that is. All right. Third, establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Fourth, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into action. Fifth, write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire, name the time limit for its acquisition, state what you intend to give in return for the money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Sixth, read your written statement aloud twice daily, once just before retiring at night and once after arising in the morning. As you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. Now, this is so close, but not quite. It's just so close, but not quite. The reason that I said a 3x5 card is not magical is because, like when we talked about doing the letter, it should first of all be something that you enjoy reading. And the letter is fun to read because you're imagining, oh, I'm back here and I'm telling Jacob, this is what happened, and my body healed of this thing, and it just happened, unfolded in perfect order, and I blah, 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 blah. So it's fun, right? Because, well, here's the deal. What I decided was, as I was reading through this, and I thought, well, I should set a goal, and I thought, $10 million. And one of the things that he says in here is the thing was like 5 years from now or something. So you're thinking like 5 years from now, and this is later on in the book where he says that in 2020 I will have $10 million, which I will have done this for, and it will come in over that time in increments. Blah blah blah. So I thought, $10 million is what I want to feel like I have. Because I know people who have $10 million and it feels like $10 to them. They're talking poor mouth all the time. They live in fear. They're always worried. They're struggling to hold on to it or get more. And I know times when I had $50 and I felt like I had $1 million. So the specificity of this is about the feeling that you want to have. Because the issue with a lot of this, even Ernest Holmes, because this was all still fairly new at the time, was the assumption was that you knew what you wanted, and if you got it, it would make you happy. But what we know now is our psyche has changed enough that we get stuff and we are happy for that 7 minutes. Was that Jeopardy game show theme song? Okay, so what you want to do is the same thing we talked about last month, which is to think again about how you want to feel and be specific. So my thought was, I want to feel like I have $10 million. I don't care if I don't have a dime in my pocket. I want to have the feeling of having $10 million, because there was a time when I was living in Santa Barbara. This is early days when I had just started lecturing full-time. I'd been lecturing for 1.5 years and working part-time at the Santa Barbara County Child Protective Services. And so I had just stopped working for them. I had not had a car, but I had gotten a motor scooter. Santa Barbara's small, you can zip around. I was like 32 years old, 31 years old, something like that. And I was living in what I'm pretty sure was a converted tool shed. Almost positive that it was a converted tool shed. And so I was living, and it was like in somebody's backyard, and it was, and it was, oh God, thank God, hot. But anyhow, it was like, had a tiny little kitchen, a little half refrigerator, just one room. I had my desk in there, and my bed in there, and a chair that I bought at Z Gallery, and a little television. I was like, okay, I am living my frickin' dream. Because I'd always wanted to be, for like the previous 5 or 6 or 7 years before that, wanted to be a full-time spiritual teacher. I was. I had no debt. I was zipping around on my scooter. I was just about to get a little tiny Toyota used from somebody at the lectures. So I was like, oh my God, like I am so freaking prosperous. I was just living close to the beach in Santa Barbara, and I was going to it was just fantastic. But the way that I had moved into that place, I had been living in had like a guy who owned a house. I was renting his guest room. And I'd moved from there to move into this little shack. And so some of the people from the classes were helping me move because I didn't have a car. So my desk and just a couple of my clothes and stuff like that. So this one guy had helped me move, and he had his own business in Santa Barbara, and he was, a reasonably successful businessman. And so he called me the following week, and he said, I'd like to take you to lunch. Okay, so we went out to lunch, and he said, I want to help you because I've been coming to your lectures, and I really enjoy your work and everything. He said, but I didn't know, and when we moved you, I realized you're poor. And I was so horrified. And that threw me for probably 10 or 15 years. because I had felt so abundant and like a millionaire because I did anything I wanted to, right? Because I didn't have any debt, and I liked my home, and I liked where I was lecturing and who I was lecturing to, and most people in town knew me. I would go to big, fabulous parties and stuff that I couldn't afford to go to. I went to all these things that were not based on anything of like I had a position or anything like that. I was in everywhere in on a pass, right? Because people be like, what is he doing here? Like, this is like millionaires and this dude. But I felt like a millionaire. So there I was next to Olivia Newton-John, like going, hey, what's up, girl? So then he said, well, you're poor, and I need to help you, and you need to do this with your business and that with your business. And I spent the next 10 years then going into debt and acquiring stuff so that people would think I was successful. Every step of the way feeling more impoverished and poor and alone and like a failure. So that's why we have to be very specific about the content instead of the form. Because you can get the form of, I remember that years later then, that very same guy coming to a house that I had rented years later then. I was back in Santa Barbara, and I was in this little house, and it had an office, and it had a laundry room, and it had a big kitchen, and it had a fireplace, and it overlooked the Santa Barbara mountains. And he came in and he said, now this is the nicest place you've had. Now this is really it. And I remember thinking, I think of killing myself every day. Every day I thought about killing myself. But I look good. I look pretty good to other people. He's really made it now. Right? So that's why it's so important to go into what is the feeling I want. You might think you want to be married when what you really want is just to feel loved. Because there are lots of people who are married and somebody adores them, but they still don't feel loved. That's the 5 Love Languages book. If you ever get that, where it tells you about, we're just different languages, right? So we want to go through and say, okay, I want to feel like I have $10 million. I want to feel like I have financial freedom and abundance. I want to feel healthy and sexy no matter what I weigh or whether I, have a wheelchair or whatever. This is how I want to feel in my experience. I'm going for pure, what is your burning desire to feel in the various areas of your life? What do I want my work to feel like? And that's, you get very specific about that. It feels, and you get into the feeling. So that's one of Neville Goddard's, and probably most of you are familiar with Neville Goddard, his book called Feeling is the Secret. And that's what we want to really realize with all of this. As you go through, if you decide to get this book and read it, you go through, what's the feeling I want to have here? Instead of me constantly feeling like I need to manipulate and dominate and control my outer world and shape it up into being this, what do I want that area of my life to feel like? What do I believe is possible for me? What do I believe I deserve? That's really what we're always working on. We're always working on our consciousness. We're just working on our consciousness. How open are you to receive the gifts of the kingdom? We've talked here in the last couple of months about this whole idea that quote, it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, means that when you will not receive it, you are denying God pleasure. We deny God pleasure. The universe, we are denying it the pleasure of expanding as us. The universe wants to expand as you, and it doesn't care how old you are, or, when Terry Cole Whitaker comes, she always says, when people say they're on a fixed income, I say, who fixed it? You fixed it. When you tell the story that you are on a fixed income, you are denying God pleasure. Because the universe isn't limited by your fixed income, except that you keep limiting yourself every time you say that to somebody. I'm on a fixed income. Well, you fixed it, because you could be saying something else. It is the Father's good pleasure to bless me over and over and over again. The divine plan for my greater good is now effortlessly unfolding in joyous and easy ways that delight me. You can say that over and over and over again instead of saying, where am I going to get the money? Where am I going to get the time? How am I going to figure it out? Who's going to help me? Right? So one of the things that I think we also do, I talked about this recently, was we spiritualize ourselves out of things. We spiritualize ourselves out of our dreams. You have a dream and you start going for it and you start taking action and you start knowing, oh, life is about action, and you start doing it, and then you go, well, really, what does it matter? Because after all, we're all one, and there's grace, and I shouldn't be thinking about vain things like money or a home or this or that. Then you spiritualize yourself out of it. So then your life is 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. You lose 5 pounds, you gain 10 back, you lose 30 pounds, you gain 20. Like, because you go, I really care about this, I'm really doing this, and then you go, oh, but really it's all thought anyhow. So why don't I just eat 2 pies? It's not going to really matter. I'll just think thin. And right, we do, whatever. Like, oh, I really am getting out of debt and I'm taking action and I'm believing and practicing the principles. And then, but really it's all abundance and I can just affirm while I charge the shit out of this card. It'll all come in, right? So we're constantly spiritualizing ourselves out of making real progress. So that's what I love about this book, is if you're going through and reading this book, man, he just keeps you on the freaking straight and narrow. Because as you're reading it, he is just endlessly right there with, is this really a burning desire that you have? There's a woman who, I don't even know how she found out about me, but before I was even living, I was still living in Palm Springs at the time, but still driving to Santa Barbara every month as I do, and she lived in LA, and somehow she found out about me. I had not lectured in LA, but she was coming up to Santa Barbara, and she just freaking loved it. She would laugh when no one else was laughing. She was just having a freaking ball, because they're used to me in Santa Barbara. They're like, whatever. But she was like, oh my God, this is all new to her. She was having a great time. So when I started my small private classes in LA, she was one of the people that she had done the required reading, and I knew her, and so she was coming in the beginning, and then she got busy and wasn't coming. Well, then I heard from her husband, and he said, how much are the classes? I want to pay you for 3 months classes as a surprise for my wife. Okay, great. So she came, and it turned out that what had happened was, and if you saw her, she's just like a naturally sort of happy person. Well, she had had a miscarriage, so she was very, very depressed. And so she came in, and this is the kind of thing that you wish you had like time-lapse photography of like the process of something like this, because she came in that first week, and of course, during the whole opening meditation, she just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and what it was the release of everything that she'd been carrying around since the miscarriage of, okay, I'm here and I can just freaking let it go now. So she just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed through the whole opening meditation. And then, like, during the week, I think she sent me an email saying, like, she was basically back on the freaking highlighted route. Like, okay, I cried that all out. I got what you were talking about. I went, and it's one of those things where you see where somebody just like takes principle and runs with it. They just don't freaking look back. They're just like, okay, that's okay, great. So she let go of all that grief, and she was coming to class every week, and that was when I had got not this thing called You, but the other one, the little red one of The Art of Life, which used to be called This Thing Called Life, which is one of the best Ernest Holmes books you can get, is The Art of Life. I mean, it's this size, it's red, it's just amazing. So that was one of those books that I had given to everybody in class. And so she took it home and read it, and she read it. By the next week, she had read it 3 times. And that was just freaking it for her. Because she had absolutely, and this is what I really want, if you get nothing else out of today, get this. She had absolutely no ambivalence whatsoever about what she wanted. And this is the problem that most of us have, is we have ambivalence about what we want. That's what I mean. We start, and then we spiritualize ourselves out of it. We make excuses, or we say whatever, or we slow down because we're afraid if we keep moving, we're going to lose this person in our life. We do all of these ways that we are ambivalent about what she wants. She would have stole a baby. She was getting a baby. She had no ambivalence about a baby, and Ernest Holmes was telling her, this is how you get a baby. Now, it never said baby in there, but that's what she read everywhere. It was baby, 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 baby. Right? So she had no ambivalence whatsoever. And that's what it takes, really. And this is what he's saying in here over and over and over again. It is a burning desire that you have no ambivalence about. That you're not, I say over and over, there is no place for hope or wishy-washiness in this. Hope and wishy-washiness, that's religion, that's A Course in Miracles, that's a lot of spiritualized stuff, that's Buddhism, that's wishy-washy hope. There is no hope in New Thought. New Thought is a principle, like science. Scientists don't hope science works. They don't say, geez, we sure hope gravity will be there. So there's no hope or wishy-washiness. So you decide, you choose. That's the other thing. You're going to see determination, decide, 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 decide. You want to get used to saying this. I've decided. I've decided. I've decided. Say it. I've decided. Now, doesn't mean you can't change your mind. That's what we're afraid. But I mean really, truly change your mind. I don't mean, I hit my turnaround point where I always hit, so I quit. This is where I was quit, so I'm quitting here. That's not, I changed my mind. This is just what my pattern is. I get this far and then I quit, because that's what I always do. That's my turnaround point. Right? You can change your mind. Like at the beginning of this year, one of the things that I said was, I want to start lecturing in Los Angeles, and I want to rent hotels and stuff and grow it to where I can lecture in a theater, like on a monthly basis. I want to do a New Year, Christmas Eve service at the Ace Hotel downtown, da-da-da-da. So I started decisively moving in that direction. I rented the first hotel room, I did it and went, fuck this. This is not what I want. And I changed my mind because what I realized was this does not feel the way I want to feel. Now, what most people do in situations like that is they go, well, this doesn't feel the way I want it to feel, I'll try harder. I'll force it more, right? This is not the right feeling, it's not resonating, I'll just force it. That's the Barbara DeAngelis forcing love to work. Right? We're gonna force this relationship, okay, we'll just try harder. This is clearly not working. Try harder. So I got in. I was like, oh, no, this is not what I want at all. So that's when I just backed off, and I said, okay, so I need to go for the feeling. Where's the open door? I know I can feel the way I want to feel. Where's the open door? And then John keeps bugging me. Come down to the vision. Shut up. Stop asking me. I told you I'm not coming down there. Where's the open door? Feels the way I want it to feel. Because you know what I don't like about doing these hotels is I don't want to go in and set up the room and schlep my stuff and have a sound system and how I'm going to tape it and all that kind of stuff. I want something where it's all easy and it just flows and I don't have a bunch of volunteers and stuff. So that's what I want. That's the feeling that I want. Where's the open door? You should come down to Santa Barbara. Stop talking to me. So then I was like, oh, there's the open door. And then there's the guy that I was talking about earlier in West Hollywood has a little center there. And when he had initially asked me, I was like, no, I don't want to, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, oh, this is the feeling. This is exactly the feeling. But now, as I've talked about before, what happens then usually is the reason that as soon as you start going for what you really desire, then what you hit is your resistance. And the resistance is the thing I don't want to do. Well, the thing that you don't want to do is the thing you must do 9 times out of 10. Not every time, but 9 times out of 10, that's the thing you're going to have to do. It's like I would tell the story about, I want to go swimming, but I do not want to be cold or wet. Okay, that doesn't go together. That's not an experience that goes together. But so often, that's our thing is, I want this, but I don't want what goes with it. Then you don't really want that thing. Because what's required of swimming is wetness. That's part of swimming is wetness, right? So I wanted the experience of being here, but I don't want to drive here. So that was my resistance. So then what you have to do then is move through your resistance. You say, I want this, and this is the price of that. That's why he is saying, and Ernest Holmes says it over and over and over again too, this is not a philosophy of something for nothing. There's something that's your part. There's a price that you will have to pay. You want fame, baby? Well, fame costs, and here's where you start paying in sweat, as Debbie Allen always said on Fame. Like, this is the price of that thing. Ernest Holmes would always say, there is a spiritual coin that's paid for everything. But the great thing is, within the spiritual realm, is that it's so disproportionate. It's wildly disproportionate what you give compared to with what you receive. And yet, there is a line. I mean, I don't want to denigrate the Course at all, because there's tons of stuff in the Course that I love. And one of the things in the Course that's so potent is where he says, you still aren't willing to do the one thing you've been asked to do. And that's so often the case with us. It's like, we've done everything except the one thing that would matter, because I don't want to. Oh, I don't feel like it. Terry always used to say, I'll say this twice, but listen closely. The thing that you're waiting to have happen before you make the commitment happens after you make the commitment. The thing that you're waiting to have happen before you make the commitment happens after you make the commitment. And that's across the board. So many times in life, we live in the state of, if I had more confidence, I would ask for a raise. No, if you ask for a raise, you would build confidence. Usually the action comes before the feeling. This is the other thing Terry always used to say. If you live your life according to your feelings, you will never accomplish anything, because most of the time you won't feel like it. I don't feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like paying that bill. I don't feel like going to work today. The things that we have a result in our life in are things that we do whether we feel like it or not. Because it's a what? Habit. That's all we're doing. Now, I want you to get this, too. So this is the second thing, if you get nothing else. What we're dealing with mostly are just habits. That's all it is. It's just a habit. There's no devil. There's no ego. There's no dark night of the soul that's trying to get you. You just have a mental habit. That's all it is. It's just a mental habit. One of the things that this woman wrote in her email that I thought was so perfect, because we have to point out these things, where she said, well, because she was thinking about things that I'd said years ago, or even last year when I was talking about the Course of like the ego, flees from love and it turns to fear and it da-da-da-da and all this kind of stuff. And she says, we all, have habits of turning from love, and we also desire so much, and we're greedy, and we're never satisfied with anything because the ego keeps moving the line. These are all things that I taught. And I said, you know what? That's not true. That's not true. It's just a habit, because there are some cultures where people don't feel that way at all. It's a cultural habit. So it depends on the culture you're in and the family you're in and where you live as to whether that's true for you or not. Here in America, it is common for us to never be satisfied. But there are other cultures where people are satisfied. So what does that mean? It means it's a cultural habit. It doesn't mean, there's no ego that does this to everybody. I saw, I forget who the guy was who just died recently, who was a reporter on 60 Minutes for a long time, but they did a whole show of a lot of his best shows. And I didn't see all of them, or all of this one, but I came in about halfway into it. And it was this tribe of people that I don't even know where they were. Could have been Fiji or somewhere like that. But they were basically, they had no home. So they were just constantly traveling, basically, and mostly on water. So mostly boats in these tropical, wherever the heck they were. So they were some kind of nomads. I don't know, but they were just little brown nomads. Absolutely freaking adorable. Couldn't have been cuter than a bug's ear. And because they were so happy. And they I don't know what language they spoke, but they had a guy there who was an interpreter. And so they were saying that the language, there were certain words that the language did not have. It did not have hello or goodbye or anything about time. And so they didn't, like, they never missed you. Because most of them were family, because they were this indigenous tribe of people. So it'd be like, oh, this boat's going off, and they might not see each other for a year, but they don't miss each other because they don't have this story about how you're supposed to be together with people in your family, and if you're not, then you would be sad, and then you would be this. They talk about the power of now. They have no words for next year or tomorrow or the weekend or anything like that. And they don't, like I said, they don't greet you hello or goodbye. They have no sense of anything except, here, this is what we're doing now. And they had like this guy who looked like he was about 800 years old. And they're very active right up till the freaking end. And they catch their fish, they spear them. And he said, they showed him like spearing his lunch, and they said, this is what, because they're in boats, they have no storage. They're not storing anything. Like, talk about the opposite of hoarders. They're taking nothing. They got a loincloth and a rowboat. And so he's spearing his lunch, and he said, he is not worried about dinner. They're not thinking about their next meal. They are just thinking about right now, this is my lunch, and I won't think about another meal until I'm hungry again, whenever that is. And then I will do that. Right? So that shows you there's no such thing as an ego that does this or that, or a tendency for humans to do this or that. It all is just habitual. It's whatever you've been indoctrinated into within your family or your culture or your religion or whatever. So that's fabulous, because that means you're not fighting against anything. You're just creating a new, better habit. When you start off in the new habit and, I'm going to start to feed the cells of my body what they crave for. So you get to learn your own biology, and you realize, I do better with this and that, so I'm going to have this and I'm going to have that so that I can feel better, and so that the universe flows through me more easily without, symptoms of this or that, my skin breaking out or whatever happens. And then you find that you've said, okay, so really I don't do very well in sugar or carbohydrates. So what I'm going to eat is like lean protein and juices and fruits and things like that. And then suddenly you've eaten 6 cakes. So you don't go into the story of, so I'm a failure and that's my ego mind is fighting against me because I don't have any self-discipline or any self-will. And, now I might as well wait until next month to start again. Right? All this stuff, you just go, oh, sure, because that's an older habit. That's all. It's going to take time for the new habit to kick in, and the new habit may take 2 years to kick in. It's just a habit. That's all it is. It's not, oh, my God, in our family, we're like this. And it's just a habit. It's all it is. It's just a mental habit pattern. That's why Louise Hay says it's just a thought, and a thought can be changed. That's all. But if you have a big story around it, it's harder to change a story because we cherish our horrible story. Wait, let me tell you my horrible story about my this and my that and the catastrophe and this and that and the other thing. It's crazy foolishness and mayhem. I wanted to read this from this thing called You. Often good and sincere people ask if it is right to use divine power for personal purposes. See, people say things to me, and I just am so horrified at times. And I know where they get it, and I know when I used to think that way, but they'll say things like, well, but, I would like to get married and have a family and have our own house, but I don't know, if that's God's will. I'm like, God doesn't have a will! There's no such thing. That's a mythical Santa Claus that you were told about that doesn't want you to have good shit, right? But really loves Jay-Z. Right? God's will is expansion. That's all. Just expansion. That's where, it's interesting because really Ernest Holmes, if he was going to talk about anything other than science or just religious science, he usually talked about the Tao. So he would quote Lao Tzu. He would quote Emerson sometimes, but he would quote Lao Tzu. And much of this is like the Tao Te Ching, that It just is this energy that flows where there's an opening, and where it's not open, it just goes around you. It just misses you. You've closed off, your valve is not open, so it goes to the next person. That's all. It's not personal. It's how open are you? That's why I always tell people you don't live the life you deserve, you live the life you think you deserve. Right? Kanye West thinks he deserves an amazing life. Right? So he lets in a lot of stuff. But the people who are at the top of the mountain are not the smartest and the most talented and the most this or that. Sometimes there are singers who are singing in sleazy little disgusting clubs who would blow you away with their talent. But they don't have the consciousness for something else. And a lot of times they're happier in that club than the person is at the Grammys. Because they understand that they're going for the feeling. Here's the feeling I want in my career. I want to feel like a superstar in this dump. Because I found, when I was lecturing over at Park Manor Suites, when we first got in there, that room was a dump. And I was like, we are home. I was so happy there. I can't tell you how happy I was there, because my whole thing was, there's no one who's here for the wrong reason. You have to want to be in this room. It is blowing hot air through it. It is dirty and grimy. It is uncomfortable. It is crowded. You have to want to be in this room. And I loved every second of it. For years, I was just thrilled to be there. But of course, your consciousness manifests around you wherever you go. Well, one of the things that's in my consciousness, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Wherever I go, order and beauty. So wherever I land, 5 minutes after I get there, the message comes, we're remodeling. Everywhere. The apartment buildings that I live in, the places that I lecture, wherever I go, 5 minutes later, they're like, so we were in that room, I don't know how many years, but they remodeled it several times. Well, we were painted, different furniture, different this, and that. They'd move us up into the penthouse where we still were paying the same rent as we were for the little tiny room downstairs. We were in the penthouse for a year while they remodeled the downstairs and still only paying what we were paying for the little place. Because order and beauty wherever I go. That's your thing. So everything is our consciousness. Is what are you believing? Well, that's why I expect big movement from this gathering today. Big movement, and effortless in many ways. See, this is, just because there's a lot to do does not mean that we lose our peace and tranquility. See, that's the story that we're afraid of, is that, but if I really get goal-oriented and I want to achieve things, then won't my peace fly out the window? No, because you're not the doer. You're taking action, but you're not the doer. Right? You let the law of attraction sort out all the details. That's all. You let the law of attraction sort out the details. You're going for the feeling, and you're doing what's indicated for you to do. Okay, let me read this, because I know I read something else too. Okay. No one thinks it is wrong to use other laws of nature for personal purposes. The laws of mind and spirit are natural laws. The only difference between the use of them and other natural laws is that most people have not realized that they can use spiritual law as consciously as they do other laws. Do not hesitate to use this law for any purpose which is constructive. It is no more selfish to use spiritual law for personal purposes than it is to plant a garden for your personal use. That's what we have to really understand. Is you wouldn't say, I'm going to plant tomatoes and watermelon, and someone would say, well, that's awfully greedy and unspiritual of you. Right? Or if you were super spiritual, you'd say, well, I'm not going to eat any of it myself. I'm giving it all away. Well, aren't you just so freaking holy? Right? That's what we call, now we're in spiritual competition. BS. Moreover, there is no escaping this law, for it is as intimate as your own thought, as personal as your own being. So what the deal is that you're using it anyhow. You're either using it to increase or you're using it to decrease. So you're either using it consciously or you're using it by default, but there's no not using it. Because consciousness creates, that's all it does. So you're either doing it consciously or you're doing it by default. So in the areas of your life that are working, that's your default in that area of your life. And the areas that are not to your liking, then that's your default in that area, and that's the area to work on then. Because you're not just working on a generalized consciousness. We have a different consciousness in different areas of our life. So you may have a wonderful relationship consciousness and a terrible money consciousness, right? It just depends usually on what you were taught, where you came from, what you saw as a child, what got implanted in your subconscious mind. So then you're just planting something else. That's all. I want to read this. This is why, again, this is Catherine. I love Catherine Ponder. Little Catherine Ponder. She's 900. She still lives out in Palm Desert. Sometimes I tithe to Catherine Ponder, and she'll write you back a typed letter in her scrawl, Catherine Ponder, and you just go, Catherine, I love you. I'm Catherine Ponder Jr. The second she dies, I'm moving to Palm Desert. I'm just going to take over. I'm just going to be like, okay, she is gone to her next assignment. I'm here now. So at the very beginning of this is the dynamic laws of prosperity. She talks about, because today's talk is prepare to prosper. So whatever that means to you, because prosperity is about everything. So abundance of health, abundance of energy, abundance of love, abundance of peace, whatever it is that you want to prosper in, then that becomes these are the seeds of me preparing now to prosper. And so, you can get, you can get this on Amazon and places like that. The bookstore could probably get it for you too. There's a set of CDs and MP3s of a live class of Catherine Ponder's. There's like 6 CDs of her teaching this seminar, which is basically all the principles of the dynamic laws of prosperity. And you have to hear it just to hear her voice, really, because she has that southern accent, and she makes you say the affirmations. All right, together. Everyone says it. Together. And I'll tell you in a minute one of the stories she tells. Well, one of the stories that she tells in that's not in here is she talks about how she had I think a maid or a housekeeper or something, she said, as she was typing the manuscripts and stuff for this, and she would be talking about the principles, and the maid would overhear, and she said how the principles affected everybody, that she kept losing maids because they would hear the principles, and then they would come back and say, well, I have to quit as your maid because I got a better job working at a shop, or I have been listening to all your stuff and doing what it says, and my husband just got a big bonus, and he wants me to quit working now. And so it was constantly like she couldn't keep any help, because everybody around her kept prospering every time she would talk about this stuff. So, and in fact, she says in her seminars and on these tapes, she says, now we will, because they would take a break. They would do take a break and then come back. And she said, so I want to know that we will have demonstrations during the break. There will be people. So then she would talk about it. She would say, well, during the break, someone handed somebody a check for whatever, or during the break, somebody gave somebody a vacation, da-da-da-da-da. Because when you start giving permission, it starts to open those energy centers. As you start to talk about these things, you start to feel good, and feeling good attracts good. It's not the other way around. See, we think good stuff will make us feel good. No, feeling good attracts good. That's why when you're in love, nothing bothers you, right? Right after you've met someone, you don't need to sleep. Oh my God, no, we just stayed up all night and we just talked and we made out and we kissed and we talked and we walked on the beach, and then I just went straight to work. It was fabulous and I wasn't tired at all, and then I came home and did this, and then 5 years later you're like, don't touch me. I'm so tired, I can't move, right? Because we started to tell ourselves a different story. It's not because things have changed, it's because we're telling a different story to ourselves now, and we're closing down those energy centers instead of opening them up. Do you know that you talk yourself into being in love? We think it's love at first sight. No, you see someone that's a perfect person to project this on. It happens so fast you don't even realize you've just gone, whoop, bam. And it's sort of like, don't say anything because you will ruin this. I've already decided who you are and what this is all about. Right? And we just tell ourselves the story that makes us fall in love with this person. I was telling a story. I hadn't talked about this in years. This was when I was living here and lecturing here. And there was this really cute guy in LA that I had met on the internet because he had lived down here and been to the lectures, but I had never met him. And then he was living in LA. And I was going up to LA to Marianne's book, The Gift of Change, I think, had just come out. And so she was having this book signing party at somebody's house in the Hollywood Hills. And so I got an invitation, and I was like, well, this is the perfect date because I'm going up there anyhow, and he knows Marianne, he's spiritual, so I'll pick him up, I'll take him to this thing. So now this was before GPS, and I would get freaking lost everywhere. And this was in the winding hills and stuff. So I'd gone to wherever this guy lived in some weird place and picked him up, and now we're winding up the hills, and he's telling me the story. And he's just adorable, but he's telling me these stories, and the more he talks, the more I'm like, uh-oh. Because he's telling stories about how, like, well, you know, he just finished. And if you'd see him, it was really, because he was a very slight guy and just really cute and adorable. But he starts telling the story about he had just finished his anger management classes because he had thrown a lamp at his ex-boyfriend and gotten arrested and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, this seems weird that you don't seem like the spiritual person who came to the lectures and blah, 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 da, 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 da. And then I was, you know, and the initial impulse was I could just open the door and kick him out. But then behind that, behind that is like, well, let's see if there's good sex first. Because that can always override your arrest record. Right? It's just the story you're telling yourself, right? Of like, that's not a red flag, it's more pink. It's not a red, it's more like, you know. But we did not have sex, and we did not have another date, and that was it. But it is the way that we're able to tell ourselves things that make ourselves feel a certain way, and then we think that it's the situation or the person or the thing, but it is really the story that we're telling about it. And the story we tell about it is opening those centers or closing those centers, right? And so we want to be in the state where, okay, so we're going to start talking about prosperity. So the first step then really is to expect. These are principles. They're not things we wish or hope work. Gravity works. The law works. So we start to expect, okay, just from us gathering together and starting to talk about these things, we've opened the centers. So things will start to manifest. There will be demonstrations that will start. So, how's my time? Is my time okay?
Well, a couple minutes for the CD.
Okay. Prosperity brings new look and new health. For instance, within a week after the first lecture, 2 secretaries had received increases in pay, one with a promotion and a new title. A stockbroker soon reported that he had more business than he had dared hope for, although most of his fellow workers were comparatively idle. One client, whom he had not seen for several years, appeared and handed him a check to invest for $200,000. A month after beginning to deliberately invoke prosperous thinking, his income was 4 times its usual amount. A lawyer who had several industrial clients, then on strike or out of work, reported that the recession was suddenly over for him. His income zoomed upward into the $2,000 a month bracket, which at the time seemed a great increase, though later, after he established a definite pattern of prosperous thinking, it seemed only normal. Prosperous brings new look and new health. But more than financial returns appeared. As I weekly lectured on prosperous thinking, I began to realize that the people in attendance were beginning to blossom forth with a look of inner peace, poise, happiness, security, and stability not previously apparent. The failure look of depression and discouragement was replaced with a look of success, self-confidence, and inner happiness. The look of defeat was replaced with a look of dominion, authority, and victory. It was wonderful to behold. And she goes on and on about that, but that's all happens very quickly. Now, as I was saying earlier, if we had a time lapse, this woman who started coming was reading then The Art of Life. Of course, within a short period of time, she reported to us that she was pregnant. But at that time, she said, and I was talking about The Art of Life again, and I said, you know, she said she's read it 3 times now. She said, oh, that was weeks ago. I've read it 35 times now. 35 times. Now, I want you to think about how often you read something like that really resonates with you and you really dig it. How much you read that compared with how much garbage you read. Gossip on the internet, stories about possible diseases you might have, just on and on and on, things that you constantly take in and take in and take in and take in and take in, as opposed to somebody who's like, I'm not ambivalent, I'm having a baby, that's all there is. This book makes me know I'm going to have a baby, I'm just going to read it and nothing else. I'm not even going to read the signs on the street. I'm just going to read The Art of Life. I'm going to read it and read it and read it. And so, of course, she had a fabulously healthy, wonderful baby. She got a new job. She stopped coming to the lectures. She's probably going to be president soon. But there are people who, and I can see this now that I have opened my mind, and I'm loving this book so much, the people that read Think and Grow Rich tend to turn it into their Bible. So people that love Think and Grow Rich usually have been reading it for 25 years. Stories of like, I read 2 pages of it every single day. I've used it in this and this and this and this and this, because it just keeps you straight. It just keeps you like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It's very plain, 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 easy. This is it. What is your burning desire? Isn't it nice to have permission to have a burning desire? What is your burning desire? And then you just keep going into the layers of that. Because a lot of times, it is just the ephemeral form of it. But that's a sign to you that there's something there for you. And the deeper you go into it, then the more that you get into the content of it beyond what it looks like. There's a wonderful book that came out long before the things that are going on now happened. It's by Daphne Rose Kingman, called The Future of Love, and she's a therapist, and she basically talked in this about how, and she specializes in relationships. And the basic thing is that at that time, and still a lot of ways even now, the idea is there is a model of relationship that is thought of as the healthy relationship you're supposed to have. And anything other than that, that's not in that, then therapists were supposed to try to move you in that direction. Big money and fabulous apartments who lived with their mothers. And that was normal there. So that's why we have to keep coming back to thinking, some of the things that you want, do you really want them, or do you believe that you want that because you want still your sister's approval? Which is unavailable, by the way. Right? Or something that you're trying to make happen, because then you will say, it's so crazy, because that guy who came to me and said, I really want to help you because you're poor, 5 or 6 years later, he went bankrupt, got married and divorced 2 or 3 times after that, ended up actually being run over by a train. It's strange that I know so many people who've been run over by trains. I know a lot of people who've been run over by trains, and it is hard to get run over by a train because trains won't come after you. It is extremely difficult to be run over by a train. And I know 3 people who've been run over by trains. Anyhow, that's just an aside. Let me see if there's anything else I want to say. I'm sure we're a million miles past the CD. All right. One of the things that I just started doing recently, this was so fabulous. It's so, what's amazing? How fast this shit is. We're used to the idea, well, it all just went to hell in a minute. But it can all just go to heaven in a minute. But we don't think that. We think, oh, it'll take a while to fix this. But we never think it would take a while to ruin this. Right? Well, things can get good really, really freaking fast. You can turn around a downward spiral fairly quickly if you're willing to let go of the story that it's going to take a long time. So we want to keep that in mind in our consciousness of, you can get right back on the highlighted route pretty freaking quickly. So I was listening to an old Louise Hay tape of The Power of Your Spoken Word, which is really good. Power of Your Spoken Word. And so she was saying something, and I just started doing it. I was listening to it as I was walking home from the gym, and it was so great because she was talking about, you know how Louise is. She said, when she gets into bed at night, she says, thank you, Louise. I love that. Like, I don't even know why she's thanking Louise. But I just thought, well, that's just the best thing ever. Because think of how many people are going, damn you, Jacob. you blew this today and you didn't get that right today, and oh my God. But she came and go, thank you, Louise. So I was just walking home and I just went into that state of mind. Ernest Holmes used to talk about when he would treat for everything. So when he was walking places, he would, and basically we might as well say blessing. So he'd be treating the bushes and treating the trees and treating this and treating that. And there were stories, I don't even know, there's so many religious science stories that you don't know if they're really true or not, but there were stories that wherever Ernest Holmes walked, things bloomed. So you could see in neighborhoods the streets that he walked down and the streets that he didn't walk down because of how he would bless things. And so I was hearing Louise saying, thank you, Louise. So I just started, thank you, Jacob. And then I started thanking the sidewalk and thanking the trees and thanking the sky and thanking the rain and just all these, and it just, in a very short period of time, like 3 things just like that happened that were amazing. Doesn't matter what they were, but they were 3 things that were just like boom, boom, boom of like, well, how quickly that was. Where you just shift into that consciousness. And let me teach you now a prosperity thing you can do. This comes from Vitura Papke. Vitura Papke was one of the very first religious science practitioners. She was really Ernest Holmes' practitioner because she trained with him and everything, and so he would sometimes go to her for treatment work and stuff. And she was still around when I started, and she would come to the religious science church in Los Angeles that I was at. She was a little tiny old lady, and she was just fabulous because she was very to the point. I mean, they were just very to the point then. In fact, she was one of the people who was kind of talking about how the muddied waters of religious science were starting to get in those days because somebody stood up in the class and said, well, Vitura, we don't call it a problem here. We call it an opportunity. And she said, well, honey, if it ain't a problem, I don't know what the hell it is. So she was just, I don't want to hear your spiritualizing of this. If you have a problem, you treat for the conditions. You don't spiritualize it into, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. That's another way of saying, I guess I'm supposed to suffer in this way because it's good for my soul to understand. Like, no, you treat for conditions. Right? Victoria's like, you treat for conditions. So I'll tell the two stories about Victoria that I remember clearly. One was where she was, I forget where she was, but she was driving at night, and she seems like the person who probably looked like a little old lady when she was 12. Probably wore a house dress, and like she just seemed like that kind of person. So, and she's very tiny, and so she was driving in her car at night, and she had a horrible accident. The car spun all the way around, and she just went straight into treatment. So she was, God is all there is, and all there is God, and blah, 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 and treating. And when she opened her eyes, the person had drove off and was gone. So she just drove home. And in the morning, her husband called for the mechanic to come, and the mechanic came out and said, well, how did you get the car home? And he said, well, my wife drove it home. And she said, there's no way that anyone could drive this car. The axle is this, and the thing is that, and the such doesn't work, and this car is undrivable. There's no way that she drove this home. And he said, you don't know my wife. And so the story that she would tell, and I saw her do this literally, about prosperity is if when she was having any issues with money, she would get one of those big, I forget what they're called, the big, tubs that they used to do the washing, the metal, what is that metal? Galvanized. She would get the big galvanized steel, this little one, get the big galvanized steel thing, and she would take it out into the yard, and there was a tree there, and she would pick imaginary money off the tree. And she would pick the money off the tree, putting it in the galvanized tub. Then she would take it in and dump it in the bathtub. And then she would go back out, and she showed us how she would do it. And she would fill it up and take it back in. And she said, this is impressing on your subconscious mind that you are deserving of money, that money grows on trees. And so she said, and her husband was not a religious scientist, wasn't into any of this, but just adored her, did whatever, went along with her and stuff. And so she did say, but then eventually my husband did build a fence around our yard because of the neighbors. Seeing her picking imaginary money off the tree got to be too much for him. But it's an energetic thing. right? You get that you start to, the ideas of all of these things, and you'll get, when you get like to the third chapter or fourth chapter, where he's really talking a lot about autosuggestion. That's what all of this is. It is the autosuggestion into your subconscious mind. So there are things that you do like that. Those are actual actions that you take. Like that, picking the imaginary money off of the tree. I used to imagine a Brinks truck backing up to my kitchen because I had a door there, opening up, and then bringing in cash and gold bars and sticking them in my cupboards. Because what it does is it starts to impress that on your subconscious mind. Because what you don't realize is you think, oh, well, that's silly and that's ridiculous and that's this and that. But you don't think it's silly and ridiculous when you imagine what it's going to be like if they repossess your house, or what it's going to be like if you can't make the car. You're imagining all that. You're going through all of that. What am I going to say when they come to take the car? Like, we do shit like that, and we don't think anything about that. What do I do when he says I want a divorce? Like, all that kind of shit. But we don't think that's weird. We think I'm just reasonable and rational, like preparing for the worst. But we think, oh, it would be weird to pick imaginary money off of trees. No, it all is going into your subconscious mind. It's all programming that fertile soil. So I remember Ian Levan Zant talking about a woman, well, a girl, I guess, who came to her and wanted to go to college, but she didn't have any money. And she was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I really want to go, and da-da-da-da. And Ian said to her, what you wearing to graduation? That's what I call Nevilleizing. You go to the end. If you have absolutely made a decision, I have a burning desire to go to college, I am going to college, that's it. I don't know how, but the doors will open. What am I wearing to graduation? Who am I inviting? Right? Then you look for the open doors, and they will start to open. Right? But you're the one that sets that into motion, and then you really start expecting it. I'm looking for the open doors. And then you have to pay attention. Like when John keeps saying, come down, you don't go, no, I don't want to. Then you go, oh, that's the open door, right? So then I started treating for that. I notice and see the open doors immediately. You get that? Because what you can do then is have a tendency to say, well, what's wrong with me? I never see the open doors. That's a terrible affirmation. Right? You go right at, you're always looking at what's the other thought. Okay, oh, I blew it. I always blow it. Okay, I don't blow it like that anymore. I notice more quickly. Correction comes more easily to me. That you're just telling yourself a better story. Because so much of it is we are creating these self-fulfilling prophecies over and over and over again. Like, what kind of weekend do you expect this weekend? What kind of weekend are you preparing for this weekend? And then start, oh, yes, isn't it? It's great. It's just unfolding in perfect and delightful and wonderful ways. Everybody loves me. The universe has a crush on me. Oh, that's just so much, universe. Oh, the universe has such a crush. The universe is stalking me. I do have another story. This is another energetic game that you can play that will seem weird, but it works. Because it's all energetic. See, we get caught up in the words, but it's not the words, it's the feeling. How do you feel about this? So, and that's why I said feeling is this, and he talks about this later, about that all of this has to be filled with feeling. Can't just be rote, saying, and doing. There's a feeling that you get behind it. So the universe is just responding to your energy and the power of an emotion. So that's why whatever you're focusing on, you're getting more of, whether you want it or don't want it. Doesn't make any difference whether you want it or don't want it. Anything that you're focusing on with emotion back of it, you're getting. So sometimes if you want something, the best thing to do is resist it real hard. So here's the story behind that. There's a woman that my friend Zan, she has this friend whose mother, I don't know, when her husband died, I guess he left her a bunch of money and it was in all these different things and she was not used to dealing with the money and everything, but he was really good at it, and so it would just keep duplicating because it had been invested in all these things, and it would get to a certain point where they'd have to make another account for it. And this woman hated all these accounts that she had. It was too much to keep track of, but her daughter was always like, well, you have to move this money because, I don't know if it was like because it was over the $100,000 that the insurance, FICA or whatever, but it was like, you can't have that much money in one account. We have to put it in another account. And so her mother would always be saying, not another account. She would be outraged that there was so much money that they had to open another account. Well, all that did was just multiply the money. The more she resisted, the more freaking money came in. The more she was like, no more accounts, the more it was like, another account. Right? So you can start doing that. There's times when I've done that, when I've gone like, I have to make another deposit. I just made a deposit yesterday. This is exhausting, taking stacks of check to the bank every day. Right? Because seriously, the more you resist it, then the more it is there. You just go, I can't believe some guy's giving me flowers again. I just got flowers yesterday. Right? It really is about where your consciousness is focused on. So we can't get caught up and trapped. That's why I said there's nothing magic about a 3x5 card or how you do it. It really is the energy and the focus that is on it. Right? If you're putting emotion-backed energy behind something, then it's increasing. It's just increasing. And that's why something even as much as like just Ernest Holmes walking down the street and focusing on these things, it feeds them. Like the object of attention receives energy. I learned that years ago in a fitness magazine where they talked about when you're lifting weights, if you're doing your biceps, think about your bicep because the object of attention receives energy. It will work no matter what. If you're doing this, your muscles will grow. But what they'd said was, if you concentrate on it, they will grow faster and bigger because the object of attention receives energy. That's why if you are resisting your weight, you just get bigger. Because even though maybe you're doing a lot of things, your energy is still on, I don't want my waist to be this big. So your waist is bigger. I ate a grape last week, and I have an inch bigger waist. What is happening? It's because of the motion-backed energy as you focus on your waist. That's why Louise Hay has that little set of cards that's about blessing your body, and you can listen to this. She has a recording of it too, where she goes through every single area of your body, and there's a specific affirmation and blessing about it and what it's for. My waist is wonderful. It bends this way and that. And the affirmation is always, I love and appreciate my beautiful whatever. So it goes, I love and appreciate my beautiful eyes. I love and appreciate my beautiful waist. I love even your age. I am always at the perfect age. I love and appreciate my beautiful age. Even your anus. I love and appreciate. She does your anus. And she tells you the anus does, da-da-da-da. It's wonderful in my anus. I love and appreciate my beautiful anus. I love and appreciate my beautiful genitals. I love and appreciate every single thing because the object of attention is receiving energy, but it's receiving whatever, if you're pushing against it, it's receiving that kind of energy. And if you're blessing it, it's receiving that kind of energy, right? All right, so anyhow, these books, this one, Think and Grow Rich, if you go to jacobglass.com, I have a link to, under current reading, there's a link to this particular version of that book. The other thing that's great, too, is they've updated the amounts. So you don't have to do the math. You know how, like, if something's written in 1937 and they say $50, you have to think, well, what does $50 mean today? They've updated the amounts so that you don't have to figure that out. So that it'll say, like, $1 billion instead of when 1937 it would have said, $1 million or whatever. So everything is updated, but it's really good. Just this particular version of it. And I'm going to be talking about this for a while along with all the other stuff. So. And the Ernest Holmes book that I read from, this thing called You, these are all on my website and stuff, and they have them in the bookstore, and they can order them in the bookstore here for you. So easy, easy, easy. So let's do a prayer. Once again, we close our eyes, take a deep breath. Relaxing into that infinite, friendly universe. It is the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom, the limitless, creative, loving kingdom. So now, return again to the life you want and begin by looking to see what is in your life right now that you want. that you brought in, that you created, that you co-created, that is wonderful. All of those wonderful aspects of your life, you created and allowed. Whether you understand it or know it or not, you used this infinite law to manifest. Acknowledge yourself and acknowledge the universe. And feel proud of yourself for allowing this much good into your world. And feel the appreciation of the universe that you opened up to let this light shine through and expand. As you again look to see, what now do you want to create? Whether it is just a beautiful afternoon, a wonderful vacation, a career, health, more youthful vitality, creativity, ideas. What is your desire? And let go of the idea that you are going to make it happen. Let the law of attraction sort out all the details. Your part right now is to dream it into being. And the way to begin that is with the feeling. How do you want this part of your life to feel? The feeling is the seed. It begins right now in this moment to take root and grow. There is no time or space except within a story. So we know and we believe that manifestations can come very quickly indeed. We're not in a hurry though, but we are open for things to happen very fast or gradually, whatever is the perfect timing for this particular part of our life. Our part is to keep aligning and to keep lining up behind the dream, to let go of doubt, to let go of uncertainty, to let go of being ambiguous or wishy-washy. Look to see if you are truly determined to thrive. So we place this dream now into that divine mind, knowing that there is one thing behind everything. Behind everything is the one thing. That one thing does everything. Writes every song, writes every book, creates every embryo, makes every flower, every sunrise, every idea, and it is everywhere equally present, moving through each of us right now, just as individualized aspects of the one thing. Let go of the old story of struggling and striving and making things happen and working hard for little reward. And affirm for yourself now, I am the golden child. I am the golden child. I am the favored child of God, meant to prosper and thrive in every way. It doesn't matter how old I am, how young I am, what size I am, what I've done in the past, what my intelligence or talents are, what my education is. The only thing that matters is my openness. So open now to receive. Expect big movement from this moment forward. And decide now what you are willing to give in spiritual coin. What's the energy that you are going to contribute to this dream? Whether it is studying, praying and treating, making phone calls, but whatever it is, imagine it all happening naturally with ease. Things that you find are so much simpler maybe than you thought. That there is a kind of grace carrying you through whatever arrangements need to be made, whatever changes might need to happen within your own story. It's as if you were being carried by the angels. Open to receive. Open to receive. Open to receive. We give thanks for this time together, for this joining to the one thing, the one mind that drew us all together. To it now we offer our hands and our feet and our voices, asking this wisdom within, where would you have us go? What would you have us do and say, and to whom? We remember now, as always, the way that we will know love and the way that we will feel love is by this divine love moving through us to the world around us. For this we are thankful, and together we all say, Amen. You might want to stretch a little bit. Okay, so again, jacobglass.com has all my information if you want to email me or something. And it has under current reading, it has this particular version of Think and Grow Rich, which is compiled by Ross Cornwell. And my lecture dates in Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. And I'm here the third Saturday of every month. Have a great month. Thanks so much for coming.